Greetings, everyone. This is Cindy Smith. We are moving on to part 3 of the PowerPoint regarding reporting and year end. Today we're going to discuss a demonstration of the FER, balancing the FER, and some state funds reminders and notes. The first part today is going to be a demonstration of the FER, and this is going to show us some screenshots of exactly the steps you will take in this FER process. At this point, we're at the end of fiscal year. All of our application revisions are complete, so we have no other intention of revising the budget. There are no pending reimbursement requests, and at this point, after all of those, we are ready for the LEA to change the status to FER draft started. And you will see below a screenshot in ePlan of what that looks like. The red box with the hyperlink FER draft started is what you will click on. So once you click on that, you're now in the FER workflow. So again, there are no more budget or application revisions are allowed. You cannot create any new reimbursement requests. Each grant section in state funds application, as well as consolidated funding application, and in CTE and IDA discretionary grants, now contain an actual revenue, final expenditures, balance sheet, a FER Summary 1 report, and a FER Summary Report 2. Grants that allow carryover will also have a final expenditure report section that will include the carryover. This is a screenshot in ePlan what that looks like when you see all the components that we just discussed, from the actual revenue all the way down to the FER-related documents in FER Summary Report 2. And at the very bottom, you will see Final Expenditure Report with carryover. The next screen is a screenshot of what it will look like where you go to upload your revenues. You will go click on the hyperlink that's highlighted in the red box that says Upload Revenue Data. Once you click on that, you're going to see this screen, which is you choose the file that you have to upload by clicking on Choose File. And once you've chosen that, you will see the Create option down in the right-hand bottom corner. And then once you clicked on that, this is what the next screen will look like, is you're going to click on Process Revenue Upload. Again, in the red box under the hyperlink. Once you do that last step, you're going to see actual revenue is now loaded into the FER. And this is a screenshot in ePlan, what it will look like once you've successfully uploaded your actual revenue. You will repeat this process for balance sheet data. And remember, your beginning of year reserves have not been loaded into ePlan. So make sure you make any adjustments necessary to your beginning of year reserves. And just a reminder, you may have negative reserves. This is a screenshot of the balance sheet adjustment. This is our beginning of year's reserves. And you'll see it highlighted in the red box, the bottom right-hand corner, is if you will need, this is where you will make those adjustments to your beginning of year reserves if necessary. Okay, now we're going to move on to balancing our final expenditure report. We're going to go over the summary report 1. After keying or uploading your final expenditure report and resolving any upload errors, ensure that your FER is balanced. And what does FER Summary 1 mean is, or what it's asking you rather, is do total assets equal the sum of liabilities and reserves? If you're not in balance, you have to correct errors on the balance sheet so your FER Summary 1 report is in balance. Again, look at your total assets and do they equal the sum of your liabilities and reserves? If you're not in balance, you will not be able to complete the FER. And the most common error that we have is if your software upload is done before your books are closed. So everything you're uploading in here is before your books are actually closed. The beginning of your reserve is what is being uploaded in here. So you've got to change that to your true end of year reserve amount. But as you will see at the very bottom of the page, this is what the FER Summary report looks like in ePlan. And I've got a box around the red box. In red is highlighted, which your total assets have to equal your liability, reserves, and fund balance in order for your Summary Report 1 to be in balance. We're going to continue with FER Summary 1. If you're uploading prior to closing your books, first you want to ensure that your assets and liabilities in the FER match ending balances on your balance sheet. And then the closing fund balance account in each fund needs to be adjusted to its new July 1 balance. And I feel like I do keep saying that because it is the most common error. Be sure you're reflecting your new reserves, not your old ones. $39,000, which is unassigned fund balance, will need to be adjusted in your Fund 141. 34555, restricted for education, also needs to be adjusted. This is typically for federal grants. That's the reserve account that you use for federal grants is 34555. You'll have your individual grants that you're doing in ePlan for all your federal grants, but you also, in state funds, under 142, you'll have a sum of all of your federal grants, and you'll have one ending reserve for the sum of all those. And we will touch on this a little bit later. But you input the individual ending reserves within consolidated funding application and all your other federal grants. But you also have a ending reserve for all the 142 grants together under state funds. Another reserve account is 34570, which is restricted for operation of non-instructional services. So your food services is in Fund 143. This reserve will also need to be adjusted to your new end of year reserve. This is an example of adjusting end of year reserve in Fund 141. Again, if you're uploading prior to closing books, beginning balance in $39,000 will upload, and you've got to change its new July 1 balance. And we're going to do the calculation of how you get that new reserve, the new July 1 balance, what it should be. If we start out with 1.8 million is our beginning balance in $39,000, we're going to add our total revenues for the fiscal year, which is 6.5 million. We're going to add any transfers that we have in. For this example, is 50,000. And we're going to subtract out all of our total expenditures, including encumbrances. So we're going to subtract those, and we're going to subtract any transfers out. So in this example, our new July 1 balance in $39,000 will be $2 million. And you will use this same calculation for all your reserves. So in the FER, you'll key in the calculated July 1 balance for reserve accounts in each fund as well as each sub-fund in your federal grants. Now we're going to move on to FER Summary Report 2. What does FER Summary Report 2 mean? It means that your total funds must equal total expenditures. This calculation is going to ensure that your beginning reserves plus revenues are equal to your expenditures and end-of-year reserves. Again, so we've got the beginning reserves plus our revenues, and then we've got our expenditures plus our ending reserves. They have to equal each other and balance in order for your summary report to balance. So if total revenues, expenditures, and ending reserves match balances from your financial statements, then ensure that the beginning reserves match the beginning reserve balances from your balance sheet. So in other words, when you're looking at your financial statements and you have a beginning year reserve, be sure that that beginning reserve matches what E-Plan says. And just remember, when you're looking at beginning reserves in the final expenditure report, these are the reserves that you had in the previous year. So they're your ending reserves from last year. So you might need to make adjustment to these, because what happens is you do your final expenditure reports for the year, and then sometimes you have to make audit adjustments. You have to adjust entries that they give you to adjust. So your beginning balance might need to change. It may not be, your books and E-Plan may not match due to audit adjustments. So be sure you're checking those, because if you're not in balance, you have to correct these errors in the report so the summary report 2 balances. Otherwise, you will get that error message and you cannot continue to complete the FER. This is a screenshot in E-Plan of what the FER summary report looks like that we just discussed. And you can see that the grand total available funds must equal the total expense end of year reserve fund balance in order for summary report 2 to balance. Once all your data is in, you need to check your validation messages. These will be on the sections page. Warnings are for you to review and look over their information, but errors will prevent you from completing the FER. And this is a screenshot of what that looks like in E-Plan. And where you see validation, if you'll click on those messages, they will direct you to your issue and your error or your validation. Okay, if you click on messages, again, to see what the error warning is, warning, you need to review this and be sure that you understand what it's saying, and it will allow you to continue with the FER, but it does need to be read. The error, if you don't correct this, it will not allow you to continue with the FER. And below that is an example of what the warning would look like in E-Plan. It's going to be a hyperlink that will take you to your issue. Once all your data is entered and all validation errors are cleared, click FER Draft Complete. And below you'll see exactly what that looks like in E-Plan. And once you've clicked the FER draft complete, these are the necessary approvals in which it will be final. Your final FER will be actually completed after all these approvals. And this is the order in which they take place. And we are going to talk about on the next slide, I know the LEA regional fiscal consultant will approve once the fiscal rep has, and we're going to address the state funds checklist in just a moment. Okay, so the checklist, I encourage all of you, before you submit this to your fiscal rep, that you also review this checklist that we will be reviewing before you send it to us, before submitting. So in order to get to this checklist, these are the options, these are the necessary steps, that you need to take. If you go to funding applications, state funds checklist, you will see 18 items to review. They may not all apply to you, but please review these. And also, if this has already been submitted to the fiscal consultant and it's coming back to you again, please review this checklist. And any comments will be on this section's page for you to make any modifications necessary. This is a screenshot of just a part of what the completion checklist looks like in ePlan. This example is for Fund 141 as well as 142, but this allows you to see exactly what we are looking for on these FER completion reports. This is going to be our last section in part 3 of this presentation, state funds notes. So for state funds, be sure that you review Object Code 217. We want to make sure that the Stabilization Reserve Trust has been uploaded in the FER correctly and that it's not rolled up into 299. This is the issue that we had with several districts last year, is that local government sometimes rolls everything up into 299. So be sure when you're looking at your report that you see Object Code 217 and your Stabilization Reserve Trust is being accounted for in the correct object code. Fund 142 reporting. This is used for the FER only. As we talked about earlier, there will be a roll-up for all the grants in Fund 142, and it's found in ePlan under the State Fund section. ePlan has preloaded into the budget $1 just so you will be able to complete your FER. Again, we're doing these individually grants, but we roll them together to be sure that everything, all the grants are captured and that none are double counted. The state funds FER should reflect revenues, expenditures, and balance from all funds on your general ledger. So make sure you report all funds and that these funds are the sum of all ledger balances. For example, some districts have a Fund 145 as well as the Fund 133. We all know that we have 141, 142, 143, but be sure that you're reporting all funds that the LEA uses, that every fund from your district is accounted for. The financial data that you report in state funds FER is used for several things, and every part of it is very important. And these are some of the examples below the per pupil expenditures, the BEP unit cost. It helps determine the cost of proposed legislation, reported to US DOE for nationwide statistics, as well as the annual statistical report. So again, be sure that these FERs reflect all revenues and expenditures, as well as all balances from your general ledger. Revenues. If uploading, please be sure to clear out any reserve amounts that may have been loaded into the actual revenues page in error. This is a common mistake that we see. It is part of the checklist for you to review to make sure that this does not happen. However, there should not be any amount in the reserve line on the actual revenues page. So when you're looking at your actual revenues, you should not have any reserves. If you do, please clear those out. The balance sheet. Remember, beginning of year reserves are already loaded into the balance sheet. So be sure that you're looking what E-Plan shows is beginning and what your books show is beginning. Because again, they could be different due to audit adjustments. Expenditures. For state funds, there's no restriction in state funds for a 10% overage. That is only for federal grants. The last part of the state funds is reports, or the other year-end reports. As you can see the screenshot below, it gives you a list of what all these entail. Not all of these will apply to every district, but remember, this is part of the FER and they have to be completed before the FER will be approved. And we will speak more about these individually in part 4 of this presentation. But this does complete part 3. Thank you all for listening today. And we appreciate everything that you guys do. And we will continue with other year-end reports on part 4 of the presentation.